Hello and welcome to another edition of Around the Ice here on Fantasy Frames Network. We are pumped to have you tonight. We got a couple special guests as we are going to go over our Dynasty Home League draft. You're going to want to sit in on this one, see where these values are, see where these guys are going. Stick with us here on Around the Ice. So thanks for joining us here. I want to say hello to my co-host, Toast Clark, and Aaron. We've got another buddy. He's going to pop back in here. Here he comes back in from our home league. John Martini Crack House is his team name. We'll go over all our teams, kind of where we drafted, picks we liked, picks we didn't like, where we thought we got some steals, and where some people kind of missed the boat on some selections. Toast, we got any news and notes before we get this thing kicked off here?
Yeah, from a hockey perspective here, I know, and Aaron, you mentioned it last week. Sid Crosby actually signed another 2-year deal. We had a little bit of discussion. Wouldn't he look really, really good, like a Colorado uniform? And started kind of just kicking around the can. But he signs for 2 more years, and of course, Aaron called it $8.7 million. Because that's how Crosby actually rolls with his number, and his previous deal is 8.7 as well. So he's staying in the Steel City for at least 2 more years there, and he's playing at such an unbelievably high level. It wouldn't shock me if he signed another 1 or 2 year contract after this one. I know JT, your boy Lucas Raymond, he actually did sign his new deal, 8 years, 8.075 million. And that's been, again, the norm, right? 8 for 8. That's what we actually see all of these guys do, especially when we know the cap's going to be going up, and it's going to be going up, we think, drastically, at least probably topping that 100 million mark here in the next 2 seasons. So I think right now they're at, 90, 91, somewhere around there. I'm guessing, Aaron, does that sound about right? We're getting close to 90.
Yeah.
So Raymond actually signs, and they got one more free agent there, an RFA, Mort Sider. They still got to get him signed as well, and you got to think that his is going to be every bit of that. And I looked today, and your Wings, they got another $8 million in space. So that makes sense for them to go ahead and go out there and sign Sider long term, and we're going to talk about him tonight, I'm sure.
Yeah, we don't want to mess around and not get those guys signed up as soon as possible. So I'd love to see those move. So as we get into things, before we start getting into all the strategy, everything else, I'm going to pull up our scoring here just so we can kind of get an idea where we're starting here. So this is a roster. This is a league we've had around for a long time. We decided to kind of reset this year, go to a dynasty league from a 3-man keeper league where we used to keep the guys in the league in the round we drafted them in. So we expanded the rosters up to 40-man rosters, minor eligibility. We got 10 minor leaguers on here, 82 games, and then they got to come up officially after that. We are allowing you to move guys up and down, though. So if you guys get on the active roster and play some games, you can pull them up and use them for a while. We did not go specific positions on this. We just did forwards, defensemen, and goalies. So no center, right wing, left wing, specific starting spots, only forwards, defensemen, and goalies here. And then our breakdown is 12 forwards, 4 utility spots. That can be either forwards or defensemen, 4 defensemen starters. And we decided just to go with 1 goalie. The craziness of goalies, we said, hey, we're just going to start 1 goalie. So 21 starters total, 9 on the bench, 10 in the minors. We do have 7 IR spots. It is hockey. Guys get hurt, and you don't want to have to drop guys in order to compete. So we did that. Weekly roster moves. We made a little adjustment on this year. There is no, limit to how many moves you can make per week. But what we did is we added a yearly roster moves of 35 roster moves, and we did a free agent, a fab budget of $50 with a $1 minimum bid. So once you get up to your $50 or your 35 moves, you are done as far as that is concerned. Scoring. Now, assist 2 points, a block 0.5. This is an Ultra Bangers League head-to-head points, so I will remind people that goals 4 points, game-winning goal gets you an extra 2, hat trick gets you 4, hits 0.5, penalty minutes 0.4, shorthanded goals 2, shots on goal 0.2, goals against minus 0.5, saves are 0.2, shutouts are a 2, and wins from the goalie only are a 3. As you can see, we don't have losses in there for the goalie. That does not hurt them. We did that in order to make goalies a little worth a little bit more. So that's kind of the breakdown here as we get our league going. Gentlemen, anything you want to say about kind of the breakdown, the startup before we get into any of these, any of the rest of this for now?
Yeah, I mean, I like the format, and the best thing about this was we took one of these podcasts and kind of talked through, so if you go back, I can't remember exactly when that one dropped, but we went through pros and cons. So this was it was a collective effort. At that said, we're also, again, we've drastically changed the format. So if something is a home run and works great, which we anticipate everything will be, but we can always go back. We can alter something or change this, or hey, 35 game and win it, or but the fab is probably the biggest change in my opinion, outside of the rosters themselves, because now you're really, you got to think more. It's not just I think before you would get success, or you would see success in our league, which outside of 3 players was a redraft league. You could just you played the free agent game, the free agent wire. You were just always out there making sure you got your starts. So it'll change that up because the rosters are a lot bigger. Like you said, JT, moving up the some guys that are minor eligible and some guys that aren't. You're moving those around, so it'll just be a different effort. I see, as opposed to me going to the free agent wire as frequently as I did, I'm going to my roster, my bench, just like a real NHL team would do.
Yeah, so talk about a little bit as we talked about strategy, because we had kind of a brainstorming session when we decided we want to adjust the league to a full-on dynasty. Obviously, like Aaron said, the fab makes a big difference between that and being able to just play as many guys as you can possibly pick up per week, with it being dynasties, switches things out just a little bit. But I think we talked about it as a league, everybody kind of felt like we had done this league long enough that we were ready for a full-on dynasty, and we've had not a lot of changeover the last couple of years in this home league, so we felt like it was worth going to a full-on dynasty, and we felt like, yeah, this is the year to do it. Let's do it on the podcast. Let's take a look at it, and hopefully, if your league is thinking about doing the same thing, or you're coming into a startup dynasty league, take a little bit of what we're doing. Obviously, scoring is going to be different depending on what your league scoring is, with ours being ultra banger, but you can get a pretty good idea what some of these guys are going.
It serves 2 purposes, and one is the fact that I think we are a seasoned group. Our 10 league managers, we've been together for a long time. We all follow the game pretty closely. So now it's really time to go on to the different challenge, which would be Dynasty. That just makes sense, right? Because it is a little bit more challenging. But at the same time, why we're actually all getting pretty seasoned. We're also getting busier as a group in our lives, with kids and everything else. So we want to put together a league to where you're not having to make so many daily moves, right? It's more that dynasty. And that's a reason why we expanded rosters from, I think we used to have 17 on the active, 5 on the bench for 22. Now we're to 30 on the active, and then another 10 on the minors. And with those only that 35 pickups a year and only $50 in fab, I mean, if you want $15 in fab for the playoffs, just in case you actually get in, you're only looking at maybe making a move a week on average. And then we really thought about, well, which is the spots that we really stream the most in the past? Goalies. All right. Well, that's the reason why we actually went down to 1 then. Let's not actually get that as stream. Let's take that streamer position out. So yeah, we've learned a lot over the past, 8-9 years of actually doing this league to try to get it about as perfect as possible and to make sure every position has some value. Hence why we do the ultra bangers. Now, our prep for that may be a little bit different than other leagues. And John, feel free to step in and maybe let the listeners know, like, hey, how you actually went about preparing, for this draft, if you you have something to say about that.
Yeah, first off, long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for having me on, boys. Like, this is great. I've been begging for a spot on the pod. Now here I am. Yeah, I'm not a hockey junkie, right? Like I've Toast, you hooked me about 5-6 years ago because you needed to fill a spot, and you knew I'm kind of a derelict fantasy player, football, baseball, hockey, and here I am. And now I'm hooked. I think year one, I took my lumps. Year two, I think I won the league. I think I won like 14 games in a row year two. So I'm in. I love it. You're right. It's and I feel like you guys are kind of professional podcasters at this point because you're kind of segueing into the next part of this discussion where you expanded the rosters. You talk about the difficulties that we had as a redraft league, and you've kind of taken those away. And it speaks to the philosophy that I had going into this draft. Larger rosters, only one goalie is going to impact a lot of the decisions that we make. And then taking one step further, Toast, I texted you before the draft started. I said, clarify what's going to happen next year. What's going to happen year 2, year 3, year 4? And you're like, well, it's going to be a short draft. It's going to be a 3-round draft. At that point, I'm like, all right, that kind of flipped the switch in my mind. It's like, all right, I gotta go young. I gotta be safe with some of my picks. I gotta have guys that are high floors. I gotta have known quantities, and that kind of framed where I was headed with this draft. So again, looking forward to talking about it. Thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point with your strategy about thinking long term and really thinking about going young and where you actually want to go win now. And just because a couple of guys may have actually picked up some people that, hey, let's say in their early 30s, they're known commodities. They're a piece, right? Whether they can actually help you win now or they can be a trade chip down the road, right? So it was interesting to see kind of where certain players fell. And normally in regular drafts, they may not have if it wasn't going to be Dynasty, if it wasn't actually bangers and it actually wasn't only one goalie as well, it would have went much, much different. So I think all in all, in the end, I was pretty happy about, I said to Aaron, we were sitting there during the draft, I'm like, everybody did pretty well that first night. We got 20 rounds done out of the 40. And I'm like, for the most part, I'm like, I don't feel like there's one team that's completely shit the bed. You know, like everybody did fairly well. And I could tell everybody had somewhat of a plan going in. You know, now we'll talk about who we actually think did better than the others, you know, but in the end, time will tell, right? But we do have some favorite teams and some favorite picks for sure.
Yeah, so I was going to say, let's pull up the draft board here, and then we can kind of start discussing as we're talking about strategy, everything else we like and dislike. Let's bring up the draft board here for people. So everybody, if you're looking at this is on Fantrax. So we moved our league from ESPN to Fantrax a couple seasons ago. Few different reasons for that. Fantrax, we had so much more ability to adjust scoring, where in ESPN, they really had locked in settings and you could do this or that. You couldn't really adjust a lot of things. Also, the ability now that we don't all live together. The perfect example is John is in Nebraska, one of our buddies who used to live in our hometown, now lives in Nebraska. We have a lot of guys that live in all over the place. We have another guy that lives in Chicago. So it's a lot harder to get together for a live draft. And doing this draft online with these types of settings with Fantrax, really with the color coding and the way that it adjusts the scoring for your league as you're doing it. So we had already had preset, scoring. This is what our scoring is. It's an Ultra Bangers league. This is what it is. It adjusted our scoring to show you what our guys scored last year and what their projections are for this year. So that's a really useful tool in these types of drafts because you might have looked at a pre-draft from some other website and they were using a different scoring system. Really tough to see how those guys are going to adjust to your league in certain circumstances. But in this league, you were able to see who are the bangers, who are the guys that are going to be tough to get. They're not going to get you much points. They're not getting much assists. They're not going to get you, goals, but they're able to get you hits, blocks, penalty minutes. And then you could fill in those defensive guys. You could fill in some power forwards that are going to be able to get you some hits. And then obviously if those guys get a goal or assist, that's just just extra cake. You're pumped at that point because you're like, hey, they're going to get me 2 or 3 points a game, just by the way they play. Hey, if they get me an assist or a goal, I mean, it's freaking fantastic. So that was the nice thing with this. Was very difficult to do that when we were on ESPN earlier. No joke. Like, it was very hard for us to adjust and go, like, how was this guy scoring in our league last year compared to this year? It was very nice that Fantrax already had pre-calculated that, and we were able to get into our draft a week, 2 weeks before we had the draft. We had it set up, everything ready to roll, so guys could go in and put guys in their queue. And if you draft on Fantrax, I highly suggest going in early, putting guys in your queue and putting them kind of in an order of where you might think you're going to get guys. It helps you from just forgetting guys or missing guys completely. And it helps you kind of like figure out what's your strategy. Okay, I'm going to go these guys here. Maybe later rounds, I'm going to take some of these guys. Definitely worth it. Also, and I've said this in all my leagues because I also play in a bunch of college football leagues. They have the best auto drafts feature on here because you can pick 1 pick, 2 picks, 3 picks. If you're at the end of the round, you can just make sure 2 picks get picked and then they go on. As opposed to a lot of other feature drafts, when you put it on auto, you're gone. It's like it's auto until you get back on there and hit unauto, and you don't know how many picks are going between. It's back to you. I've got burned in a bunch of leagues where I thought I was up in like 4 picks. I put on like auto, think it's going to take the turn. It gets all the way back to me twice and auto picks me 4 times before I even realize it because everybody was going. So that's a really nice feature that you can set a 1 pick, 2 picks. If you're like me and you're up till 3 a.m. and everybody else is getting up at 7 a.m. and drafting, right before I go to bed, I'm putting on my auto pick 1, my auto pick 2 slots to make sure that I'm not holding up the draft in the morning. Everybody else gets up, they're going, I'm sleeping. They're not waiting on me while I'm sleeping. I've already got my guys set up. So those are some of those things. If you got questions about that, especially commish questions, I know a decent amount, but Toast is the guy to get a hold of. Send Toast a message at Toast Clark on the X. He'll help you break down how he set up our league, scoring, all those questions. Because, again, if you're in a new Dynasty startup, you don't want to screw up the scoring. You don't want to screw up the draft from the beginning. You want to make it as easy on everybody so that you're not having chaos from the beginning where people are like, oh, I didn't know it was like that, and I didn't get that guy who I wanted, and then you're just like, and then you're already off on a bad foot. Don't want to do that at all. Don't you agree, Toast?
Yeah. Like I said, we've taken some lumps in this league, and I'll let the other guys maybe talk about that as well. When I say take lumps, meaning we've learned what not to do. And we've went through some things where things were good, especially when we inherited this league, JT, things were not good, right? I mean, so the scoring was out of whack. And I do, guys, I mean, don't want to toot our own horns, but I think we got it set up pretty darn good. I mean, we've lived and learned through this. John, what do you think, man? I knew you were going to say something beforehand, but regarding the scoring and the settings, and maybe your plan going into the draft. But.
No, I'm just going to come back to just running the league, Toast. Right? Like it's not for the faint of heart. If you're going to go Dynasty, if you're going to commit to this type of league, you got to have a commissioner that keeps everybody in line. You said it at the top. Everybody's busy. You got kids. You're all over the place. I remember the first time, like I said, year 1 or 2 in the league that I was in the league, I was getting texts from you on the 4th of July saying, "Hey, get ready for the draft." Right? And I'm thinking, Toast, man, it's 4th of July, man. Like, come on,
I'm ready.
I'm sitting at the pool. I got fireworks and get ready to blow my fingers off. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
But you gotta have that. And it's credit to you, and it's credit to the other guys in the league. Like, all right, we're getting texts from Toast in the middle of July about hockey. I better start, tuning in a little bit. And it's the only way to do it. If you try and put this together and all of a sudden you want to start a Dynasty league and it's Labor Day and you start sending texts out, it's too late. You missed the boat. And so I'd advise anybody that's thinking about it, have somebody that's bought in and has that level of commitment, because it takes that to run a good league, to be consistent and have guys that limit turnover. Guys don't leave every year.
Yep.
You got to have somebody like yourself that's just saying, "Hey, man, let's go."
Yeah, I take it upon myself when we've had a couple turnover spots over the past 4, 5, 6 years, and I make it a point as a league manager, and you can do this in any league, it doesn't have to be hockey, but I personally call them up on the phone, and I've done that. McGlynn will tell you that, JT, is I called up McGlynn as like, I want to walk through everything with you over the phone, get to know you a little bit for one, but two, make sure there's no leaf unturned. That way you actually walk away from this conversation. I can feel like, hey, you know what's happening, therefore you can get invested, and we can actually help build a league that's going to be sustainable, with not a lot of turnover. Because once you have turnover, and especially in a dynasty league, it's no longer a dynasty league at that point. You just have a bunch of teams that actually just inherited teams, and it would be no different than AHL actually saying, all right, half their owners just quit overnight, and they basically just come in and inherited teams, and they moved them around different cities and stuff. And you're like, what is this league? That's exactly how a dynasty would actually feel in the event that you just didn't have the guys buy in. So, yeah. Hey, we'll preach, but commissioners out there, get your shit together. Get on your league manager. But yes, I was on you guys in late July this year, even early August. Be like, this is when it's going to happen. This is what you need to be doing. Let's get ready for it. So, and everybody did a great job.
Yeah, this is a league that I used to run with a buddy who sadly passed away, and then we kind of moved the league around. I finally looked at Toast and I said, I got to have somebody that can just run this thing for me. I run so many other leagues and I'm in so much other stuff. Toast's like, I'll take it over. And he did a great job when he took over this league. I was like, I'll stay on as co-commish. I'll help out, but I need somebody who's going to head this up a little bit more, because I was running a baseball league, two basketball leagues, two hockey leagues, and I was running 4 or 5 football leagues. I was like, man, it's getting to be a lot. And so Toast was great about jumping in and then just kind of bouncing ideas and things off me as far as that is concerned. Aaron, let's go with you first, and then John, let's jump over to you real quick before we start getting into all these teams and breaking them down. Kind of talk to me about, because I've got it up so everybody can kind of see that first set of rounds going through. I think I've got it up. You can easily see the first 1 through 7 rounds there. Kind of tell out your team name just so people know who's who on here. And then obviously, Aaron, you won the lottery this year.
Yes.
You got the number 1 pick. So lucky to you. I always get second, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. I get the 1-2. So I kind of had to bounce off you all this draft. Going in here with the 1-1, talk about strategy from the 1-1, especially if you're somebody that's in a new startup like this, a new dynasty where you're got the top pick, you're kind of setting the tone, right?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, I hit the lottery. That's a good way to say it, because in hockey, again, and you could say this. Actually, I'm going to walk that back. I don't think you can say it in any other fantasy sport. There's one player in the league, Connor McDavid, that acts like 2 players or scores like 2 players. So when you do pull that, it literally is winning the lottery. So your first round, there's no thought. There's not much you have to do, but with all the league changes, and I like how we went over all that, and also too, and I know JT, you pointed out a couple of the highlights on Fantrax, just the interface, the user interface they have on here is, you can tell they really, really went to, or started from a user experience, because as you can see, as you're displaying our board here, that just the colors jump out right away. So going into this, knowing that I've got that first round draft or that first overall pick, you're more aware, because you got those hinge picks, whether you're first or you're 10th, you got those hinge picks. So I'm looking just that not only is the queue full, but you've also got the little, when's the first goalie go, and then that starts to flow. When's the first defenseman go? Because that'll tend to open up those. So that was probably first thing, was not just a best player mentality at that first pick, because that, again, the math was already done for me. It's every other round that I had to strategize for. So with all the rule changes and the full 40-man roster, 10 guys in the minors, tons of guys on the bench, it got to maybe around round 5 or 6. I did a lot of mocks. We did a mock on as part of one of the pods, and walked through all that. So kind of had a general idea, but not an ultra bangers league. But what I did was, since I had 2 picks back to back, I went with an old guy, a guy that can produce now and score now, and then I went with ultimately what I envision as his replacement. So I did try to keep it DD forward. Sometimes I got away from that, as if we a little bit, but never the age thing. So for me, age was the biggest thing. What's the ceiling on this guy? What I want to be competitive this year, because I got McDavid. So right off the bat, I'm already a step ahead of everyone else in this draft. But I want to try to go for it this year, but I want to have something that I can build towards and fill that minor roster. So that's kind of what I did. And again, that strategy really hit about round 5 or round 6 after a lot of the top level talent, or the tier 5 and above, were gone. Then I'm going old guy, young guy. Like, who can I start now? Who do I think I'll start in this 2 years from now? So again, try to match them up like that.
Yeah, and then I had the second pick, and then John, you had the 1-5, so you were right in the middle there.
Yeah.
Toast at the 1-9. So we had guys kind of all over. You know, John, what did you think? Yeah, John's team's crack house here at the 1-5, just so everybody kind of knows where he's at. What did you think? You know, there's some leagues I love drafting in the middle, and there's other leagues I absolutely hate being in the middle. What did you think when you saw, you're like, okay, I'm pulling up the 1-5. How am I approaching this draft?
So not to bring politics into the discussion, boys, but we got Kamala Harris on one side and we got Donald Trump on the other side, and we have 95% of normal people in between them, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just in the middle. So my philosophy going into it, I appreciate Aaron's comments on age. I'm looking for young guys, but I'm in the middle. I'm looking for a high floor, right? Somebody I'm not necessarily looking for somebody that's going to score 70 goals a year, 65 goals a year. I'm looking for somebody that is going to, on any given night, hits, blocks, assists, they're going to score 6 points, 6.5. And just for those that are listening, in our league, the top guys are scoring on average 6 points a game, sometimes 7. But if I can get a couple of guys here at the top that are going to get me 4.5, 5 without scoring a goal, without scoring an assist, without getting points, that's what I'm after. The other thing I'm thinking about when I'm in the middle here, I want to try and be on the leading edge of the draft ebbs and flows. So, like, I don't want to be on the back end of the defenseman run. I don't want to be on the back end of the goalie run, right? So I gotta kind of be mindful of that. Sometimes that means I reach a little bit, and I think as we go through this, you'll see that, again, in my mind, maybe I triggered a couple of those runs, and I feel good about that. I took Rasmus Dahlin round 2, and then all of a sudden I see 4 more defensemen come off the board in round 3. So in the middle of the draft, you got to kind of be ready for that. You got to be thinking about that, and then it comes back to Aaron's point earlier. All the while, you got to be mindful of, I'm taking guys that are 25 and under, 26 and under. I'm not stretching for a 32-year-old. I'm not stretching for a Nikita Kucherov in the first round. Not to get away from the topic here, but it's like I'm going younger. I want a high floor guy, and that's what I did in the middle of the first round here. Brady Tkachuk, high floor guy, middle of the round. He's not going to score 50 goals. He's not going to have 80 assists, but he's going to get you a bunch of points every night.
Yeah, and I tell you, this is and we'll get more into this, but this was the first one that just totally threw me off. I had Dahlin locked in at 2.9. I was absolutely taking Dahlin at 2.9.
I know you did.
There was no question. You took him at 2.6, and it just screwed me up. I was late to the draft. I was at 5th grade tackle football practice. I had already had McKinnon lined up. I knew he was going to go McDavid once. I already had my auto draft set for first pick. Second pick, I was like, oh, I better not auto it just in case something squirrely happens, because I had Dahlin set in my queue. You took Dahlin at 2.6. I finally looked at my phone and I was like, oh no, I didn't have a backup on where I was going there. And it just totally threw me off. I love William Nylander. Nylander is one of my guys. Toast knows I love Nylander. If I looked at it again, I maybe go Makar there and then see what Aaron does on the turn. But then I went Nylander because I was planning on taking Dahlin. Everybody knows in this league, I almost always go defense before anyone else. So I was going to take Dahlin. I had him as a keeper late last year. He was a steal. Then Aaron, you took Makar, and I was like, oh no, where am I going now? And so I was like, do I take Hughes? Because again, Hughes in a regular scoring league, that's a nice spot to get him at 3-2. In this league, which is a bangers league, he can drop quite a bit in the rankings compared to other leagues because he is such a scorer, but he's not really a banger. He's not a guy who gets a lot of hits, not a lot of blocks. So I was looking at it and I was like, man, do I want to go Hughes? Do I go somewhere else here? And I ended up going Hughes just because I was like, hey, I know I can count on him for a long time. He's a young guy. He's talented. He's on a good squad. So I went there, but I have to tell you, I wasn't super fired up about it because it's not what I was planning on at all. So that was so we only took us about a round and a half before I was sniped and already having to adjust my entire game plan.
Yeah, it was funny because everybody, and like you said, JT, you weren't quite there yet. When Darlene left the board, that was exactly the topic of conversation for those of us that could make it in. Like, oh God, Martini took Darlene. What's JT gonna do? So we all kind of, and then we saw Willie Nylander on the board because I wanted him at that 210 pick, and he's not going to make it past. And sure enough, you took him. So
and jumping back real quick, guys. Like again, talking about philosophies, I kind of had to have my tiers set right. You're drafting in the middle. It's swinging both ways. I pick every 10 picks. I don't get the gang picks. It's hard to build momentum in a draft like this. So I had to be ready to go. And Darlene, again, in our format, our league, Bangers League, maybe not for everybody, but Darlene is kind of a step above, in my opinion, because of all the intangibles that he brings, the hits, the blocks, the PIMs. I think he's 24 years old. Like, I mean, there's just a lot to like about him. So I had to stretch a little bit, and that's how we ended up. JT, I apologize. You were lost in the woods for a minute, but
you caught me. I was trying to figure out how to get caught up, but to just let everybody kind of know why you maybe went that move over Makar and Hughes, which most people would go like, oh, I'm going to get Makar, Warner, Hughes. Darlene was the number one scoring defensive player in our league last year.
Right.
If you added up his assists, his goals, his hits, his blocks, and he was, if I remember correctly, he was top 10 overall. Yep. He was right around there. I know he was right around top 10 for the league. So getting a defensive player that early, especially when you're only starting 4, and that's why I tend to go a little defense in this league sometimes. It's like when you're only starting 4, if you can make sure you get 2 or 3 real good ones that you feel like you can just count on all the time, I always feel like it's a huge benefit that you're not always chasing to try to find a guy off the waiver wire, especially the last couple of years in our league where it was only 3 keepers. So a lot of times people weren't keeping defensemen unless you got them late. I think I got Darlene. It was like my second or third year in a row keeping him, and I got him in like the 12th or 13th round because I got him real late because I think I got him like his rookie year or the next year. It was like right away. But I also had to hold him all that time to make sure to when he started getting good at producing. There's a lot of times I had him where he wasn't doing anything. So that's the kind of thing on the keeper league. But you when it's a dynasty, you have a little more leeway to go, okay, I know I'm going to get this guy for a long time. If he doesn't produce right away, all right then. But I mean, again, obviously stealing my pick, but I thought Darlene. So I know you broke down kind of these first 3 rounds. Let's go through these. Who kind of were your winners for the first 3 rounds here?
Yeah, before we get into winners, I'll quickly just talk about just John brought up a good point about how we actually plan for this as well. I do want to say that you have to go into these drafts, especially a dynasty draft, with a plan. You can't just go in like, well, I'll figure it out. I'll kind of see how the draft board comes to me and stuff. No, you have to have some type of plan. And if it ends up being where that plan, you deviate from it, you've at least done your homework on the front end. So I also tiered players ahead of time. I actually tiered up to 100 players. And I actually tiered them within 10 tiers. Now, some tiers only had 4, some 5, 6, but I had 10 tiers of 100 players before this draft even started. So I kind of knew who I actually wanted based on our scoring format and based on it being a dynasty as well. I love the churn. All right. So if I love being on the churn at 1-9, especially with 10-team leagues, you're getting 2 top 12 players. Now, would I rather actually have McDavid at 1-1? Absolutely. Actually would have, but if I'm not 1-1 or 1-2, I'd rather actually be 1-9 or 1-10. That's where I'd actually love to be. I made a purpose to actually go with high octane offenses, so you got the New Jerseys, you got the Colorados, you got the Edmontons, you got Dallases. Like, you're going to see that's got a common theme here with all of these teams as we basically come out with offense. And really my plan was to I love to emphasize players with shots on goal. You got to have players that actually going to shoot the puck. I'm looking for players that actually have 230, 240, 250 shots on goal, at least for all of my players. And I'm also targeting players that actually have near 100 hits as well. If they get close to 100 hits and actually have well over 240, 250 shots on goal and are somewhat young, then those are the type of players I actually want, because John talked about it. You have that high ceiling at that point, right? So I just want to mention that. Have a plan. But I will say, I'm going to call out our buddy Jeff Frederick, Whole and Oats. For me, I love what he did coming out with his first 4 or 5 picks. I really, really did. He come out with Bedard at 1.6. Boy, that's a gut punch right there. I mean, in the Dynasty
I was like toast.
startup,
I was like, oh my god, you did get Bedard. I thought for sure he was going to get you.
Well,
and then,
after John
Freddie
was an
ready to
asshole and
roll.
actually took Kachuk. I mean, because people got to understand, in our scoring format, Brady Kachuk's a top 3 player every year.
Yeah.
He'll get 300 hits. He'll actually shoot the puck 300 times. And he'll end up getting 35 goals and 35 to 40 assists, and he'll get close to 100 PIMs. Fills up the stat sheet, man. Does everything year in, year out. He's 24, 25 years old. And then Rasmus Dahlin does the same damn thing. So starting off those with, I mean, that's great. But I really like what Freddie did with Bedard, and then come back with Elias Pettersson as well. Bedard, 19 years old. Pettersson, 25 years old. Then come back with a Tage Thompson, who, again, 25 years old. Age is on his side. He's actually 2 years removed from a 95-point season. Buffalo, they've shown spurts at times. They're a young team, but actually putting up a lot of offensive numbers as well. And then come back with a Matt Boldy as well, who's 23 years old. I loved what Freddie did, man. He not only actually got young players, but he actually got players that actually produce. Now, they may not be ultra banger, but man, he actually went for players that actually play in really, really good offenses, and they're super young. I really, really like what he did.
Yeah, I'll agree. And good call out there. I had Brady Kachuk at the 1.14 on this, or I mean, you could even argue. I know Matthews almost put in 70 tucks last year, but if he's not scoring, he's not hitting. Like Kachuk, Brady Kachuk, he'll get those points. He'll get that 500 club. But he'll do it in a consistent way. If he's not on the scoreboard or he's not getting an assist, he's going to get 5 or 6 hits. He's going to get the shots on goal. You're never walking away with a less than 3.5 point, 4 point performance out of Brady Kachuk. So I think consistently he's so I for me that jumps out as a clear round 1 pick, especially in the Bangers League. And then yeah, I agree with everything you said about Freddie's team, Whole and Oats. Great picks. Pettersson, say what you will about his playoff performance. He who cares? The dude's a gamer in the regular season and just kills it. Little streaky, but and then again, to round it out there in the for the 4th round pick with Boldy. Love Boldy, big fan of his, and obviously we know Freddie's also a fan of that team as it goes. But the other shout out then would just I like, again, I'm going to go to I had the first pick, the hinge pick there, then go to Daylor, who's got he's long lived the note on the sheet here that JT's got up. But his first 3 picks, I would say that's probably my favorite out of all the teams. You got the other Kachuk brother, doesn't hit as much as his brother. He shows up a little bit more on the score sheet, just won the Stanley Cup. So, dude does it all. You got Kaprizov that just shoots, prototypical Russian speedster, just gets out there and does it, doesn't need a supporting cast. He can do it on his own. And then your boy, another shot, another guy that got stolen from Toast, Timmy Stutzel, but he's the up and comer. I think this is his. We've all said it before on prior podcasts. I think he's our up and comer, breakout candidate for this year. So to take him at 310 was a great pick. So I really like what Daylor did with that other hinge pick.
Yeah, and my 3 players I was targeting, whether or not I actually got any of 2 of them in the first 2 rounds, fine. But I was targeting Brady Kachuk, Connor Bedard, and Tim Stützle. Didn't get any of them. Now, I'm happy to actually have Jack Hughes at 1.9. Hughes, he's going to be a 110, 115 point player every year. And I'll be honest with you, he shoots about 370 shots on goal a season as well. That helps with the lack of hits and blocks he's actually going to bring as well. Game-winning goals he'll actually be in there. So Hughes surprisingly projected and scores very well in our league, even though he actually doesn't hit or block. And then to have Mikko Rantanen actually fall to me at 2.2, I was pretty happy, especially he's only 27 years old, 28 years old. One of the two, nevertheless, but to have somebody that's going to be tied to McKinnon's hip there. I know he has a contract coming up. I get that. He's not going anywhere. Don't worry about that. So I was pretty happy to get those two guys. But, if you think about it, the majority of guys on this, it's pretty hard to screw up the first 2 rounds. It really, really is. Yeah. Now, there are a couple teams I wouldn't have went the way they did. But all in all, first couple rounds, you're going to just come away with unbelievably great quality players.
Yeah, and for those people listening on the podcast and are not watching on YouTube, I'm going to run through these rounds real quick because we did not do that. So round 1, number 1 pick, 1-1, Connor McDavid from Edmonton. Number 2, Nathan McKinnon from Colorado. Number 3, Austin Matthews from Toronto. Number 4, David Pastrnak from Boston. Number 5 pick was Brady Tkachuk from Ottawa. Connor Bedard from Chicago was number 6. Number 7, Nikita Kucherov from Tampa Bay. Number 8, Leon Draisaitl from Edmonton. Number 9, Jack Hughes from the New Jersey Devils, and then Matthew Tkachuk at number 10 from the Florida Panthers. Then coming back in that next round on the turn, we went snake style here. Long live the no-took Kirill Kaprizov from Minnesota. At 2-1, 2-2 went Mikko Rantanen from Colorado. 2-3 went JT Miller from Vancouver. 2-4 Mitch Marner from Toronto. 2-5 Elias Pettersson from Vancouver. 2-6 Rasmus Dahlin from Buffalo. 2-7 Philip Forsberg from Nashville. 2-8 Anders Sergachev. I'm going to always butcher his name for the rest of time from Carolina. 2-9 William Nylander, and 2-10 Jason Robertson. And I'm just going to run through round 3 and 4 real quick while we have it up. Cale Makar from Colorado was the first pick of the 3rd round. Then Quinn Hughes, defenseman, Vancouver. Brayden Point, Tampa Bay. Forward, Jacob Trouba, defenseman, Rangers. Wyatt Johnston from the Dallas Stars. Tage Thompson, Buffalo Sabres. Artemi Panarin from the Rangers. Moritz Seider from Detroit. Zach Hyman from Edmonton. And then Tim Stützle, like I said, to round out the 3rd. And then in the 4th round was Zach Eichel from Vegas. Evan Bouchard, the defenseman from Edmonton. Seth Jarvis for Carolina. Jesper Bratt for New Jersey. Matt Boldy from Minnesota. Sam Reinhart from Florida. Igor Shesterkin was our first goalie off the board there in the middle of the 4th round. Then Vincent Trocheck from the Rangers forward. Dylan Larkin, second to last pick in the 4th round. And then Sebastian Aho from Carolina was the last pick of the 4th round.
And JT, if I can jump in real quick, we'd be remiss not to send some flowers to Mr. Tometich there. His first 5 rounds, he's got 4 40-goal scorers, like easily. So credit to him on you can't. I know he's semi-host. He's a big deal here, but great 5 picks, deal. Aaron. Like your first. I have no questions about your first 7 picks. Like, can't complain about any of them. You won not just the first 3 rounds. In my opinion, you won the first 7 rounds. It was a great draft.
I was nervous the whole time because every time I was making a pick, knowing he had back-to-back before it got back to me, I was like, oh God, who do I take? Because I'm like, who does he want, and who am I going to be able to get back here? Every round it was like that. I was debating. I'm like, looking at his team. I'm like, man, who would Tometich take here? I was like, I got to try to snipe him on somebody. So the whole time I thought he had a great draft. And yeah, I was like the entire time looking at like, is he going to steal this guy from me? He's going to take this guy. I was like, what should I do? So I agree with you on that.
Yeah, well, thanks. I tell you what, here, again, just hindsight's always 2020, and we're always Monday morning quarterbacking. But the Robertson, I almost went Wyatt Johnson in there. So round 3.
I was shocked. Yeah.
I know.
Him so big.
He wasn't going to make it back to you.
It's a little early though at 210.
That's true. That's again, I just think it's that guy. He's going to play with Robertson, and I think the 2 players they're super young. They complement one another so well. Just again, I know we're not in the predicting the Cup yet, but again, Dallas is going to be in the run again. They're just too young, too quick, great D, and I think it's led by these two specifically, Wyatt Johnson and Jason Robertson. But no, it was yeah. But and like Toast said, you go in with the strategy, and then again, I kind of simplified it somewhat when I was building that queue up too. Really focused on shots on goal. Those tend to turn into goals or shot percentage. Anybody around that single digit that maybe has had an off year, that normally you're going to sit about 12, 13, 14% if you're a pure scorer. So some of those guys that maybe had should settle around that. But again, strategy wise, I'm looking at shots on goal. You can get way overboard with the Corsi rating and the Fenwicks, which we've talked about before, but I don't care. I don't care if it hits a knee. Shots on goal turn into goals at some point.
Yeah, Toast, you had your top 5 value picks and your top 5 reaches for the first part of the draft. Kind of jump in there and kind of break down some of those down for me, and just kind of on your opinion on who you thought got a great value in that round and who was a slight reach on some of those picks.
Yeah, I'll go through them real quick here. Aaron, there for a slew foot. I thought the Gensel pick at 5-1 was great. Gensel's still a young player. He had so many great years in Pittsburgh there, but he had an opportunity to go and actually replace Steven Stamkos and actually play next to Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point and then Victor Hedman. And what a great situation to come into. I think he's going to score 40 goals. He's going to have 40 assists. He's going to be a point per game player. Just a great situation to get in there. And then John, Macklin Celebrini at 6'6", and we'll talk about maybe some of the rookies and some of the prospects that we're actually taking here, because I think it's important we actually talk about that in a dynasty. But you started off the craze, so to speak, on when these top prospects were going to come off the board, and who better to start off with than Celebrini? If it wasn't for Bedard last year, he's the highest touted draft pick since maybe Austin Matthews. So to get a guy like that and lock him up was pretty awesome at 6'6". I mean, you got to have that balance, right, of established players versus prospects, and he's going to be an established player like very, very soon. Again, I mentioned Hole and Oates there, Freddie, but Matt Boldy. I just think Matt Boldy is a great pick there. He's 23 years old. He's going to be playing on the power play with Kaprizov, and Eriksson Ek is a very underrated player. I do actually like, along with a note, Daler actually got him as well. I think, Aaron, you handed me a note during the draft and said, I think you're going to get this guy. And afterwards, I didn't, but he was definitely going to come back to me on the way back for sure, because I'm pretty high on him. I'm not going to give away who actually mine, because I think we'll talk about it here soon. But everybody knows I tends to play at 310. This guy actually 2 years ago at year 20, at 20 years old, he had 91 points. He's a special player. He was playing banged up. I've said about every episode, but he was hurt all season. Still ended up managing 77 points.
Oh, I think we lost Tosa. Froze on us there for a second.
I like.
Oh, there he's back.
Oh, sorry.
You froze for a second. So yeah, just keep. You're good.
Okay, gotcha. And real quick on the reaches, and I don't want to bashing behind the reaches again. A lot's gonna happen in a 40-round draft, right? So you're gonna have some reaches. I think all of us have reached at some point, right? So, but I did think, based on the scoring format, there was a reach for some defensemen and goalies, and Luke Hughes actually going, in my opinion, a little too early there. I don't have his draft round there right in front of me. I do actually think that Vinny Trocheck, based on his age, even though he plays on a high-octane offense like the New York Rangers and stuff, a little too early for maybe what was at the 4th round, if I remember right. But again, a good trade chip in the event that you actually need to move him and actually get young prospect back, so it could end up definitely working out. JT, the Quinn Hughes, you actually mentioned it, right? It totally threw you off. That was early for Quinn Hughes, based on
I didn't want him there,
right?
and I kind of was like, I had
My fault,
myself.
JT. It's my fault.
I had myself
Sorry.
stuck on a
My fault.
defenseman then. And honestly, looking at it now, I would have rather went Cider.
Oh, definitely.
There,
Definitely. Yeah.
like I can't believe I didn't take my Detroit guy. I thought it was going to be too early to take him. I actually had my eye on him coming back in the fourth, and then when he went at 3.8 again, it threw me off again. Now I'm like, now am I going to have to reach on Larkin? Do I have to get Larkin early because some of these guys are going earlier than I thought they would? And of course, you know, people know you're a Red Wings fan. They go early. I got sniped on Lucas Raymond at 6'5". I couldn't believe he didn't get back to me there. Then I was kicking myself for not taking him where I took Barkov. But then I was like, man, I can't take Larkin and Raymond back to back. I'm like, I just felt like I was reaching so much on some of those guys. But yeah, I definitely felt in this scoring format, Hughes, to me, even after I took him, I was like, ugh.
But
I'm like,
JT,
he's a good player, but
I'll
I
say
didn't
this here,
love it
though.
at 3-2. So yeah,
Even though it's Dynasty, you follow back up with Roman Yossi, which I believe in my mind was a steal at 6'9". Because even though Yossi's 33 years old, he could play at this high level for another 3 years. And I mean, he sets himself apart. I mean, he does everything, right? So in the end, let's say you took Yossi at 3, thinking that, hey, I'm going to go ahead and balance out my team with some young and actually some guys that are established, and you got Hughes at 6, it wouldn't have mattered, right? So I think that it worked out for you pretty good. I do think that my last reach here, and again, based on format, right? But getting Andre Vasilevsky for meat sweats in 8th round is just a little too early. He's the second goalie that comes off the board. He's actually got a lot of wear and tear underneath his body as well. He's older, and we only have to start one goalie. And we understand how volatile a position that is as well. So just to go goalie that early, and especially Vasilevsky that early, well above Hellebuck, who actually went by UJT in the 10th round, which was a very, very good pick. Just a little too early, in my opinion.
Toast, if I can jump in, man, just to give you guys a couple thoughts on my value picks, piggybacking on the defenseman for JT, I love Mike Matheson at 12.9. And I didn't take him because I already had Slafkovsky and Suzuki, and I'm like, I don't want to go too heavy on the Canadians. I think Matheson at 12.9 is a great. If he can finish, if this year, if the last half of last season is a precursor for what he's going to do this year as the number one D-man on that team, Matheson is going to be a steal. Love that pick. The other one I like was Will Smith, Daylor, round 12. I think he might outscore Celebrini in year one. He may just more hits, a few more blocks, playing on the wing. He may outscore Celebrini, who I took 6 rounds earlier. I think Will Smith is a great value pick at 12, and I think I'll piggyback on Matt Boley. He was at the top of my queue, and then Freddie took him from underneath me in round 4. So I second all your value picks there, Toast.
Yeah, and I
Aaron, anything jump out to you as far as guys you liked or where they went?
Well, yeah, and I like the comparison you just made there, John, with the Celebrini and Will Smith. I mean, these guys are they're gonna name your dynamic duo. Depending on your home team. This could be your Taves and Kane, your Sid and Malkin type of and they should play the same line as far as we know.
They better.
Yeah, they're just going to be bouncing that puck off. And I love what San Jose's done. I love the youth movement there. They've got some really high picks. So that jumped out at me at round 6 with Celebrini is a great value pick. It was kind of the first one that jumped out. I like Travis Konechny. He went to 5th round. Sanderson took him. Again, it's going to be around that youth movement of Philly. You got Mitchkov coming in. You got the Flyers overperform, but they're all kind of led by Coach A is the captain. But again, we talked about it last pod. I think some healthy scratches on the captain, but I think Konechny is the guy that's really he's done a lot with nothing, and now the team's kind of building up and their next level in the rebuild there in Philly. I think he'll jump out. I like Neighbors, Jake Neighbors. He was taken all the way in the 11th round. He's one of those guys that if you're in a league or you're starting a league where positions do matter, he's got left wing, right wing, and I think center eligibility. So he's got all 3 of your positions. I could be wrong on that center, but I know very minimum, he's left wing, right wing. In our league, it doesn't matter. A forward's a forward, but still am big on him. Owen Tippett, back to Freddie. Freddie's getting a lot of free press here. He's getting a lot of shout outs, but
No doubt, Freddie.
snatched him in the 9th. But my number one guy, number one value pick, I'm going, he's I don't know if you guys can see this. He's the cover guy on the new Hockey News, Stammer going in round 9 to Toast. I think you're going to get you won't get, 5 years out of him. You won't get elite level, but Stamkos went in the 9th round. So I love that when you're talking about a value pick. I think he'll make an immediate impact. And I love what Trotz has done with Nashville. He's taken him from a 0 to a hero status.
Yeah.
So, love that on the value picks. Reaches, again, just kind of agree with you on the goalies. You guys kind of called out the goalies. I'm going to Trouba. I think maybe went a little early. And that just because of his off ice comments and his off. I don't know if that's going to cut into his playing time. But the thing with a heavy hitter or he doesn't show up on a score sheet like goals and assists, but he is going to do so. So to your point, John, you talked about that. Like I want the guys that get 3.5. Yeah, he's going to do that, but it also wears and tears. Think of a Tom Wilson, like he's not out there, 90 miles an hour into somebody. I think Trouba, when he falls off the table, he's going to fall all the way off. Rob Thomas, he went in the 6th round. I think Jensen took him. Rob Thomas, just one of those guys. The inconsistency there.
He doesn't shoot.
His right. He's the pass first guy. So he'll get you 60 assists, no problem. Who cares? I don't like the pass first. I want the guys that shoot first, pass never. That's the team motto. But Then I last call out on the reach, and it was an instant regret as soon as I turned the pick in. But I think Dylan Cousins in Buffalo, he's got high ceiling but a very low floor. So counterpoint to Martini, I should have maybe looked at that, or there's probably about maybe up to 12 guys taken after him that I'd rather have in that spot. So it was instant regret after I turned that one in. I think I got a little, I don't know, no excuse. I'll ride with him. We'll see what happens. But I think that took him a little early, and that was 9th round, I believe.
And guys, if I can real quick, just for the sake of time, I'm not gonna drag, reaches or whatever. I just want to give one shout out in a true bangers league. And I have a trivia question for you boys, and you better get this right. You boys know who owns the NHL record for the most hits in a season?
Was that Jeremy Lawson?
Jeremy Lawson.
Yeah.
Pick 6'8". McGlynn. 8th defenseman off the board, taking a banger, man. I love it. I'm not saying it's a reach. I'm not saying it's a value pick. I'm just saying you got to acknowledge the bangers in a banger league draft. There he is. 380 plus hits a year. It's incredible.
He'll be a top 6 or 7 defenseman in our format, and he'll probably be a top 100 scorer. And he's only 27 now. Can he last? Right? But I love it. I'm with you.
Well, I was going to say, to go along with him, Uyghur from Calgary at 6'3" was right there as the overall number 1 defensive player in our league last year with Dahlin. He went 6'3" because the guy just bangs. That's just what he does, man. He's all over. So I think, just looking at the format there where you can get some of these guys, and again, saying like, hey, I'm going to take the guy with a nice floor that's going to give me points every week. I also thought it was very interesting trying to figure out where everybody was going to go with the veterans. It was like, how young do we want to go? For my strategy, I kind of went in between. I had some veterans. I was like, hey, if he falls somewhere in this range, I'm going to maybe grab him. I was trying not to reach on too many of the old guys, but like when I saw Yoshi there at 6'9", I was like, I got to grab him. There's no way he doesn't have 2 or 3 good years left. I also was in that mindset. I kind of wanted to try to compete off the jump. So I was like, hey, I don't mind taking some older players, try to get me in the mix right away. But like, I thought same thing. Stamkos, Toast in the 9th was an absolute great pick. I like Meyer. I mean, if Timo comes back at 8-2 was just a fantastic pick. And as I was looking at some of these guys, I was like, where do I go young? Where do I go old? I said Tavares is still on a great offense in Toronto at 11-2. I was like, I'm willing to take a shot on him. And you saw some of these other guys. So, I was staring down Ovechkin like hard for like 3 rounds. When I took Tavares, I was thinking about Ovechkin, and I was like, man, do I take him? He's probably only got like, we're going to do 2 years left, maybe 3. And Aaron, you ended up taking him. As soon as you took him, I regretted it. I was like, God, I knew I should have been. I was looking at him. But I thought that was nice. And that's just where you have to that's another one of those strategy things we talk about is like, how young do you want to go? How old do you want to go? Are you thinking, hey, I'm going to do my best to compete, year 1, 2, 3, or you're like, hey, I'm going to go ultra young and I could be freaking awesome, but it might be 3 years before my team really puts it all together. So those are definitely strategies you got to think, and especially in a startup draft. You got to think through all those things to see kind of, what type of team you want to build. Because not everybody's going to have the same strategy. And if everyone does have the same strategy, you better start thinking about how you're adjusting your strategy, because if everyone's doing the exact same thing, then it's going to be hard to fully commit and hit where you need to hit. So I definitely thought that was interesting too, to kind of see where guys were dropping, how quickly guys would take bangers. The guys were scoring a lot of points, but, weren't big goal scorers or assist guys. Where would those guys fall? Because again, you look at that list. I took a guy, in the 3rd round that is most likely going to get outscored by every defenseman that got taken in the 6th round. In this league, it's probably just going to happen. So you got to figure out kind of where you're going with those, and if you're willing to eat it, because you're like, hey, this guy I think is going to be a long-term guy for me. He might not majorly score me the most this year, but overall, compared to these next 5 guys on the list who probably are going to outscore him this year, do I want this guy long term? So I think that's has to become into your mindset, your strategy as well.
Yeah, and I'll say as well, I you guys had mentioned like the Stamkos pick, getting the old veterans as well. And there was other picks out here, right? I got Stamkos at 9th round, and there was other really good veteran picks along the way as well. And hell, I got a Brad Marchand in the 17th round. He's 34 years old, 36 years old. He's old. But if you really love your first 7, 8, 9 picks, even your first 6, 7 picks, you can actually then go ahead and be like, wow, I'm young. I'm actually looking pretty darn good. I'm satisfied for the most part. I can see the average age in this dynasty through like the first 6 or 7 rounds. I'm probably averaging around 26 years old, 25 years old. That's young. Most NHL teams, the average age is somewhere between 25 and 30 years old. Right. And so you're kind of right there in that sweet spot. So then you see a player with that upside that may only have 3 years left, but you go grab them, right? Because you're so satisfied with what else you've actually done. So you got to be willing to pivot as well. And that was definitely a pivot move. I had no intentions of getting Steven Stamkos in the 9th round. I had no intention of drafting him because I'm like, he's going to go sooner and I actually want to take him. And then he falls, Same thing with Brad Marchand. I'm like, I'm not going to take Brad Marchand in this dynasty startup. 17th round? Come on. My guess, he can either help me win now, or if he ends up going off and I end up having some injuries and don't do, I can flip him. I can actually move him for somebody to the deadline, hope he continues to pop off, and I can end up getting a good prospect. So, again, there's all different kind of strategies. And I'll say this as well. We did this league a little bit different. Most dynasty startup leagues, there's 2 different drafts. Usually there's a minor league draft that's separate that may start like around round 25 or so. And then, you finish it off. We just decided, you know what? Put everybody together. It's going to make it unbelievably interesting. And it was very, very interesting. I think that, John, you and I went pretty heavy on young prospects, high prospects, and got quite a bit of them. But it just felt right to kind of get them at the time we actually got them. I can't speak for you, but for me, like it sprinkled some in here because I was satisfied with my team. And I really feel like all in all, I got a great major league team, and my prospect pool is super deep as well.
Toast, I was going to tell you to talk about that before I send it over to John about kind of the prospects. I've got your team pulled up here for people who are watching here on YouTube. So Hostos Jepson's Malort is your team. Kind of going through here, you took your first prospect in the 7th and then came back in the 12th. Kind of talk about these guys as I'll kind of go down your list so people kind of see what players is the far right of the screen here. You started off in the 7th round with Michkov, right?
Yeah, so Michkov's, I mean, he could have, in most years, he would have went number 1. But you know, he actually didn't go number 1. Bedard actually went number 1 in that 23 draft, in the entry draft there. And you know, it was a whole Russia thing as well. So I think he dropped to 7th. Not sure if he's actually going to come over. He's definitely coming over. He's definitely going to be, he's going to be a stud. And the reason I actually like taking him there, not only, you know, kind of tying my wagon to an 18-year-old, 19-year-old Russian that's good. I mean, most Russians don't come over that young. They don't. They're 22, 23, 24. And he's going to be a fantastic player. But I also like the fact that I have 1 year of minor eligibility with him as well. I can move him up and down as many times as I want. I pulled off a trade today where I actually sent Jesper Wallstedt, highly touted goalie prospect from Minnesota, to Freddie, and Freddie sends me back David Drisick, probably the 2nd or 3rd ranked prospect defenseman. And my whole thought is, again, like, I want to actually get Drisick this year because I think he'll make the team, where I could then move him and Michkov back and forth, and that'll give me an extra start over a lot of teams all year long. And then next year, again, they'll actually be major league eligible at that point. Won't have the minor league eligibility at that point. But then I can actually go ahead and hopefully start to reload, where I always have 2 or 3 guys that I can be moving up and down and flip-flopping with one another. Because if you have a roster on our thing fully of just non-minor eligible players, you can't move them down. There's nowhere to move them. You either have to drop them, or if you're not willing to drop them, then you can't play these minor leaguers that are down there in your prospects because you have nowhere to actually move them. You got to keep some flexibility on your roster, in my opinion. You know, so that was my biggest thing for taking Michkov. Not only the fact that he's a 2nd-ranked prospect in most pools, but then to come back with Demidov as well. I mean, I get all of the Russians, man. Get all the Russians, Demidov as well at 12. I was very happy to get him. He's a top 5 prospect as well. And then Lashunov, the Hawks defenseman, he's in top 5 in most defenseman rankings as well to get that. But all in all, if you look at my minor league roster, I'm pretty proud of the fact that I felt like this is a minor league roster that is probably, and again, not calling everybody out, but I thought me and John's rosters for minor leaguers were probably the best ones. And I say that meaning I don't think anybody's were bad, right? But I think ours were probably the best and the deepest. And also I feel like I have a team that can actually win now. It's still kind of young. So that good balance there, right? So so I was pumped to get all the Russians, man, on my team. And I'm thrilled with my farm system.
Yeah,
they still got to make it out of Russia, Toast. I mean, no guarantees here, bro.
Exactly, they do.
No guarantees here.
They do. Now, Lashunov is actually out of Russia. He went to Michigan State, so he's actually out of there.
I'm more worried about Demidov,
but Demidov could be a problem. So, but we'll see about that. He could be a little bit of an issue.
I already brought politics in earlier. I'm going to keep it out of there, but Demidov, he's still going to get
Russia.
Yeah. John, talking about you took Celebrini. You started things off with the young guys, taking Celebrini in the 6th there after Bernard obviously went in the 1st round. But then you came back. You waited a while to kind of get back into the young guys. You waited till around 24, but then you kind of about every round or every other round you mix in an older player with a young guy there from rounds 24 to about 34. Any of those guys you really like that you took in those middle rounds?
Yeah, so I mean, getting back to how I started, like I kind of had this decision tree of who I'm taking, right? Like if it's one guy or another, it's age, it's it's program, it's team. So to Toast's credit, I had it in my mind. I had Celebrini at 6, and I was coming back from Michkov at 7.5, and Toast took him. Credit to him, because that's where I was going. I was trying I was trying to gang those young guys. If you look one round above it, Slavkovsky, that's back-to-back number 1 overall picks, Slavkovsky and Celebrini, you know. So like, and I was coming back from Ishkov, and then I was going to kind of just fill it with known quantities, Alex Tuck and Vince Dunn and Usaros and and Gabe Landeskog gets on that line. I'm trying to go young early and then trying to supplement it with known guys that they're just dudes, right? Like they're not gonna win a league, they're not gonna lose a league, they're just guys, right? Like they're just numbers. So that was kind of my philosophy, was trying to hit on some big prospects early, because you can never, you know, it's like anything else. You can never guarantee that these 18, 19-year-olds are really going to turn out to be anything. I was getting a little bit aggressive. I was really thankful that Dvorsky was still there at 24-6, because I knew Daler is a big Blues fan. I think Dvorsky in the next 3 years could be a 40-goal scorer. Like if he makes it, if he continues on his development path, he's lighting up the OHL. And the OHL stands for Optional Defense Hockey League. Like they don't play defense, but Dvorsky is lighting them up. And so I like that. I like Buium at 26-6, and I think Maverick Bork at 27-5. I think he's going to make the top 6 in Dallas. So that's kind of my philosophy on the younger guys. A couple prospects, a couple guys that I know are going to be in the league this year. That's how I approach it.
Yeah, and John, JT, before you go on, I want to mention another player, actually, John drafted, which I really, really liked as well. And Zane Parekh, the defenseman from Calgary. And I just want to read one excerpt from Dauber Prospects. And Dauber does a great job, but very rarely do you actually see a defenseman with the, I guess, the write-up and the attributes that actually Dauber's actually placed on this guy. They have his NHL certainty as an 8 out of 10. And that's very, very high, meaning like, hey, if you get an 8 out of 10, you're likely projected to be a first pairing defenseman. But his fantasy upside is a 9.0, which is crazy. Like most fantasy upsides for defensemen, you're not going to find a number that high. And so basically he's a right-handed shot as well. So you know actually he's going to be a scorer. He's 18 years old, but here's what they write up about him. Paraych's game is one of dynamism, creativity, and surgical precision in his activations from the point. He is amongst the most skilled blue riders that Canada has produced since Cale Makar. And so, I'm pretty pissed off I missed out on him. These OHL numbers here, I just want to throw this out. And again, we're not talking about a forward here, guys. We're talking about a defenseman. And again, take it with a grain of salt, because the OHL is exactly what John said it was, okay? But in 66 games, this guy had 33 goals. A defenseman, 33 goals, 63 assists, 96 points in 66 games in OHL as a defenseman. You don't see that. You don't see those numbers. I believe that is a huge, huge steal. And I'm pretty pissed off I actually didn't get him, even though I do love my prospect pool, but love that pick.
Yeah, Aaron, I was going to ask you real quick while we're going over prospects. You jumped in, started going minor leaguers in the 10th round. I was one of the guys, I waited probably a little too long to jump on some of these guys. I said I went a little bit older early on, trying to compete in year one. But I know Leo Carlson, you took at 12-10. I was pretty upset about when you got him there, because I was kind of looking at him. I was looking at Ovechkin. I went Matheson and Bobrovsky. But tell me about a few of your guys here. You went actually minors 10, 11th, and 12th round. Yeah.
Well, pretty much echoing what Martini and Toast just said. With in terms of philosophy, you can pull up whether it's Dauber or it's the Hockey News or
Daily Face-Off,
anything you pull up. Daily Face-Off's another great one. It's going to give you the list of prospects. And I started looking at long odds, some of the app websites that they'll give you the long odds on rookie of the year. So again, targeting those impactful rookies that are going to make an impression this year, and then hopefully build on, because like you said, Martini, these guys we're talking about 18-year-olds. I mean, what were you doing at 18? I wasn't thinking about that. they're kids. So some of them are going to hit, some of them aren't. But yeah, it was kind of like playing the odds. I like Celebrini, and I just looked up on the DraftKings Celebrini and I think it's actually Michkov tied for the favorites on the Calder. Yeah, at plus 400 each. So if you're thinking Michkov's going to do it, it might be a not bad odds at plus 400. I think I'd throw a couple bucks on Celebrini if I haven't already.
Aaron, who's after that? Who's after that, Aaron?
You got and I didn't know this till just recently, till I literally like draft night. Logan Stankoven, he's played. So to qualify in the NHL, I think you might have already said this, Toast. It's 25 games, and then you're no longer considered a rookie. So he just must be after that. But again, with Stankoven, he played so much in the playoffs. Like in my mind, he's already played 50 NHL games.
He only had 20. Yeah, he only had 20 NHL games. Yeah, yep.
Just under the cutoff, but he's at plus 600. Then you got Cutter Gauthier, which is the guy that after Celebrini went, and I think it might have been right after. No, Will Smith hadn't gone yet, but Cutter Gauthier and his whole drama with Philly and playing in Anaheim, he's at plus 750. And then you talked about the defenseman Parikh in Calgary, Martini, your guy, but other guy that I've heard a lot about, and kind of the guy that I targeted. Like if we look at round 20 and after, like who's the gem. Lane Hudson, who's plus 800. Another defenseman. He's almost got the same exact body type as Quinn Hughes. I think he's 5'9" or 5'10". So that modern day defenseman, jukes on the blue line, walks the line, does all that crazy stuff. And wouldn't be a surprise. And he should get the time with Matheson. I mean, I don't know if he'll be. I think they're both lefties. I'd have to look at that, but. He's a guy that's going to come out and I think make an impact this year with that Montreal club. He certainly doesn't have a whole lot of competition when it comes to that second or third pairing. I think he'll get up there, but he's that offensive guy that they're like Parikh. So good picks there. Good picks there for sure.
All right, as we're coming down to kind of the closeout of the show here, Toast, you had your kind of just your initial thoughts, your top three teams after the draft. I think we know a few of these guys. We've talked about them a few times. Why don't you break down your top three teams post-draft and why you like them? Yeah,
and there are just some that stood out. I mean, again, lots could actually happen here, so don't want anybody in our league thinking, oh my gosh, he thinks I did bad. What is Toast? It makes, again, just observation anyway. I actually I thought Freddie had a good draft. I thought Freddie actually had a really, really good draft, especially with actually to win now. He doesn't have much of a minor league system at all, but his win now and also to the guys he's going to win now with, fairly young, I thought Freddie actually had a really, really good draft. That's Whole Notes. And he's the team that actually came out with Bedard, and he came out with Elias Pettersson, Thompson, and Boldy, and Fox. Like, if I'm just going off the top of my head, I can remember all that right now, but he had a really, really good draft. Of course, you're always going to think you had a good draft, right? I mean, so I came out and I did, for the most part, even though my three players I really, really wanted actually went, I was able to supplement them with other good, known, sure thing players that actually have a very, very low floor, a high ceiling. You know what you're going to get from them. And then supplement that with what I would hope to end up being, the best minor league prospect pool in a draft, So I really, really like that. And then, John, I told you, I thought you and I were talking back and forth on draft night and stuff, but the kind of the way we were able to actually balance that talent now with also some actually very, very high prospects as well. I really, really liked your team. But I will say is I don't really think that anybody came out of here like, oh my gosh, like this is a dumpster fire. Like it really, really ended up being like, honestly, pretty good all the way around. I could tell everybody did their homework pretty well. I will say McGlynn's new in hockey. He's actually a hockey fan, but he's very, very new in fantasy. It is evident he actually just kind of went on projections, right? But if you look at projections, I went today and I think I lead the entire league with players actually projected with 290 points or more as 17 players. But again, it's a projection for one season. This is a dynasty draft. But McGlynn was second with 16. So he very well may be a win now, actually a very, very small prospect pool. But again, if you're efficient and if you're actually really, really aggressive, you can actually take those high-end players that actually may be aging a little bit. You can actually trade them at the right time. You can build that back up. So, man, I am so excited for this Dynasty League. But all in all, I think everybody did really, really well. But those are the teams I really, really like.
Yeah, I thought everybody did a really good job. Like you said, John's one of the newer guys in the league. He kind of like, he was talking to me about it. He's like, I think I'm going to go more aggressive and try to take the guys that like are going to score for me, because he's like, I don't know those prospects as well. And I was like, hey, man, they're prospects for a reason. Like, these guys can be awesome, but there's a ton of guys that never make it and never hit. So he was like, I feel more comfortable taking some of these guys that are set to start and get solid points. So to me, that made total sense. And that's what I said. That's my favorite part about playing Dynasty, any format, whether it's hockey, basketball, baseball, football. I love the fact that there's different strategies everyone can take, and they can be successful. It's not just one strategy that works.
Yeah. Well said. And I think that for a first year guy, you wouldn't have known, because he's got some top end players, McGlynn, that of course referring to. So top end players there. And I would agree with what you said, Toast. I'm going to do my predictions a little bit differently here, but
JT, can you bring up that draft board real quick again? Go ahead, Aaron.
I would say this year you're going to have, I think Freddie's going to win the inaugural, just love his team, love what he did, love the win now mentality. I think he's got the best overall team. But I'm going to throw two shout outs, two honorable mentions to Daylor, because he wins every time. I don't care where he drafts. He'll be a contender, and same with
Blues.
Yeah. I can't stand a single thing about the Blues, and Daylor's a fan, and it just makes it all worse because he wins every year. So he'll probably win it, or Jensen. So if teams were agnostic and we couldn't make any trades, Jensen doesn't have a chance. But he'll make 10 moves a week or 10 moves a day, or he'll be out working the trades, or he'll just wear you down. So you're fine, I'll trade him. He's that guy. So I think those three are your three. Freddie, he's got all the talent, but the other two are just shifty as hell. So long term, I go me. I like you said, Toast. Not to toot your own horn, but I like what I got. I kind of like the strategy. I got this guy that can skate now. This guy that's going to be, he might not play for 2 years, but I'm pretty happy with where that ended. But in order, then I'd say Toast, you're there. And then long term, so if we're looking at 5-year average, whether you win the league or you play second all those 5 years in a row, Martini, with what you've stocked up for ready to go, I think you've got the best long projection team, and Toast right behind him. And then so I love this format. I cannot wait for October to get here.
I'll chime in real quick. I know we're running along on time, but I agree with the Jensen comment. I look at his top 12 picks, and I'm thinking he's going to break the record for the lowest amount of hits ever. In our league.
Yes,
he's got a bunch of Nancys on his team, but they're going to score goals and they're going to get a lot of assists, and it's just going to be annoying as shit. But these guys are not going to – I don't think he has a single guy in his top 12 picks that's going to have more than 100 hits all season. It's just such an anti-bangers league, but I love what he did. Aaron, I love what you did. I said it earlier. I think you nailed your top 7 picks. My only question starts at Matty Beniers at 8, but I love what you did. And Toast, I think I've got you. You're my closest competition for long term, but my closing question for you is, I don't know how you're going to win the league without Brady Tkachuk on your squad, brother.
So I'll just say it and we'll wrap this up there, but I already sent John a text message and said, Tkachuk, I want him. And his response was, so do I. I sent one to Freddie and said, I want Bedard. No response at all. Then I ended up sending one to Daylor and said, I want Stützle. And he's like, well, you can't have him. I drafted him. So I'm like, fine. But it is going to be weird that John, you actually don't have McKinnon and Rantanen.
Right? It is. Yeah.
It's going to be really weird that Aaron actually doesn't have. Well, you actually do have McCarr now, right? But you always had Draisaitl, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you know, I always had Kachuk, you know, and JT. You still have your same guys, you know, because you still got.
Just can't help myself.
Yeah. Nylander and Larkin, you know, which are great players, but we, you know, and you try to get Dahlin, but yeah, I love this reset. I can't tell other fantasy managers enough is, again, and JT, you hit on it, and we'll wrap this up because I know you have to get to the betting show, but it is so unbelievably important that you get your scoring and your format down right from the very beginning if you're going to do a dynasty. You have to. And you have to make every single position worth something. And if they're not, then don't play that position. Just eliminate it altogether. Don't have goalies. Only have a couple of defensemen if you're not going to score them correctly. Now, some people may argue that we actually took too big of a swing. But again, the player pool is actually so deep. You can make moves, man. You can actually make trades. It just opens things up drastically. So make sure you get that right.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. This was our home Dynasty League reset where we did a new Dynasty draft. Feel free to go back and watch it again. If you got questions or say you want screenshots of our league. Hey, where did this guy get taken? Where did this happen? Where did this prospect go? Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter or on the X, however you like to call it. We'd be happy to send that stuff over to you. We'll post some of those things also as we lead up to the season. We'll post it on there, letting people kind of know as we talk about some different guys where they went and all those good things. But it was a great time, fellas. Got to get off the college week 4 betting show is coming up here. So stick with us if you're a college football fan or a betting fan. We will, me and Benny D coming up here on Fantasy and Frames. And then tomorrow night, a whole slew of shows all night long. We got Redraft, we got Dynasty, we've got IDP, we got waiver wire shows, everything you are looking for here on Fantasy and Frame. So make sure you like and subscribe and check us out. Hit that notification so you know when there is going to be live shows here on YouTube. Always go back later on. If you miss the live shows, you can always listen to everything on your favorite podcast platform. Again, thanks for Toast, Aaron, and Martini for helping us out here tonight, going over the Dynasty show. It's going to be a fun year, fellas. Looking forward to it. We'll see you guys around next time here on Around the Ice on Fantasy and Frames.